In this tutorial, we'll take a look at pivot tables, see how to use the suggested pivot tables, as well as construct a pivot table using data we already have. So I have a spreadsheet pulled up, and when you're working with data and you think you want to do a pivot table, you need to make sure that you have plenty of data to work with. Otherwise, it'll give you an error or a message saying that there's insufficient data, rows or columns, to provide a pivot table for you. So I'm in the data that I want to use, and I've clicked on the Insert tab at the top. And I want to start by first going to the recommended pivot tables, just to see what does it recommend for me, what can it just automatically identify as possible looking at the data. Sometimes I can reveal or find some pivot tables that I wouldn't have thought of creating that might be valuable to my users or stakeholders. So here's some of the recommended tables, and you'll see I have voters, different parties, different precincts, age groups, when they last voted, how many years they've been registered to vote, and where they vote, either at a permanent location or a polling location. Some of the recommended pivot tables, I see some of the years registered by party, which this might be a good table, except I don't want to sum the years. I want to probably change that to an average of how many years they've registered. So that one has potential, but I may have to tweak it some. This one, well, it's by age group, and it's summing the years registered. Again, that doesn't make sense, so I'd probably change that, tweak that years registered. Instead of summing it, I would average that. Coming on down, it looks about the same, but we'll take one of these and we'll change it so you can see how to do that. So let me go, excuse me, let me go to the precinct by party. And I'm going to click on OK. It's going to open a pivot table into a new sheet down here at the bottom, as you see. And I don't want to do the sum of the precincts. You'll remember that the precincts were 2408, 2411, 24. So it doesn't make sense to sum those, to add those up. We actually want to count those. So instead of sum of precinct, right over here, you'll notice in the far right on the bottom, I'm going to click on the little down arrow, and I'm going to go up to Value Field Settings. And here, instead of sum, which is the default, I'm going to go down to count. How many are there, not how much are they total. Okay, now this one makes more sense. So if I take a look at our voter data, or this could be different groups that we're dealing with. It could be sub-pops if we're looking at distribution of grades or attendance or various things like that. So I can see that there are 61 precincts. American Independent are represented in 61 precincts. Those that declined to tell us are in 550 precincts. Democrats make up 2,157 that are represented in a little over 2,000 precincts. The Green Party is represented in only 41, Republicans in almost 1,200. So that's how we can easily change it, just by clicking on the little down arrow and going to Value Field Settings. We can also maneuver this item over here and start or rearrange items. So I may say, well, let me take the age group, put it there in columns, and now you'll see I have the party of voters over here, what party they are, how they're distributed among the age groups, and then how many total over here on the far right-hand column. So I can easily manipulate it if I don't want to start from scratch. Let's start from scratch, though, to see how we would create this from from the beginning. So I'm going to come up and I'm going to delete this tab. Okay, I've got the tab here, and I'm going to go to Insert. And a while ago I went to Recommended Pivot Tables. I now want to go to Pivot Tables. It automatically selected my data, so I just want to move my mouse over and scroll down just to see, just to check, make sure it's getting the data. Yeah, that looks good. Most of the times you can trust it, but sometimes if you have blanks, either blank rows or columns, you may need to take a look and just confirm that it's correct. I do want it on a new worksheet. By default, that's what's selected, and typically that's what I use. Rarely do I change it to put it on the same worksheet. So I'm going to click on OK. And you'll notice there's nothing here for my pivot table yet, just because it doesn't know which pieces of data do I want and how do I want them arranged. So let's come and we'll take a look at our information here. Let's pull down, we want parties in the rows. And notice when I put it in the rows, it automatically makes up that part of the pivot table. And let's do age group here. Okay, so it has the parties and it has age group. Notice there's no data in there though. Let me widen that just a tad, make it a little bit more visually understandable. So I have 18 to 20 all the way up to 71 plus, and then if there are any that are the age group is left blank, they would be accounted for in this column. But notice I have no values here, and that's where I need to put those. So let's drag and drop different items up here to see what works and what makes sense. So let's take the voter bit of data, drag in there, and now it's count a voter, which is what I want. I could do, I mean, you wouldn't want to, but do sum of voter, and that's actually a voter ID. So you don't want to do sum, average, max, min, or product, or any of those. So count is the only one that we would want to do, being that it's really like a voter ID. And so we can take a look at our data here, see that there are 61 that are American independents, and how many in each category. Let's see, what if I move the precinct and drag it down here as well? So now what's happening is I have count of voters in 18 to 20, and then we wouldn't want to do this because it'd be too, it wouldn't make sense just because it's duplicating our information that we had. So we have total count of voters and then how many precincts those are representing. So let me come up here and I'll just click on remove field, or I could click and drag to take them out. And the best thing to do is just maybe drag that one out. Take your data and then drag it down and take a look and see, what is it telling me? Does that make sense? Is it relevant for my constituents or my stakeholders or my audience? So like here, sum of years, that doesn't make sense, but this might be an important bit of data. Instead, let me do average of years that they've voted. And now here I've got a lot of different, numbers with decimal places. And so I would want to edit my number field. Let's see, come up here. And what we'll need to do is go to value field settings, and then down here where it says number format, we want to choose that. How do we want to do it? How many decimal places? Let me say 0. Okay. And now it's going to condense it for us. And if I mouse over, you can see that it's giving information specific to that cell of data. All right, so that's all there is to working with pivot tables. The main thing with pivot tables is that you need columns, column headers, and you need plenty of data, and no blank rows or blank columns included in your data. Otherwise, it may not report correctly. Hope that helps, and you'll be able to use pivot tables to better communicate your data to those around you.